We're often told that every mystery has a key, and every ancient door is an invitation to discovery. But what if some doors weren't locked to keep people out, but to keep something in? From tunnels flooded with lethal liquid mercury to cities that look like they were struck by an atomic blast 4 millennia ago, some places on Earth are simply off-limits. Today, we're crossing the Do Not Enter tape to explore 12 cursed ancient sites where science is forced to stop, and the Earth finally fights back. These aren't just ruins, they're warnings. Deep beneath the dust of central Mexico lies a mystery that literally shimmers in the dark. We're at Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born. For decades, archaeologists thought they had mapped it all, but in 2003, heavy rain revealed a sinkhole at the foot of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. When researchers lowered themselves into the dark, they found a sealed tunnel, untouched for 1,800 years. Now, imagine being the first person to send a robot into that void. The robot's camera pans across the floor, and suddenly, the light reflects off something liquid. It's not water. It's mercury. Thousands of gallons of liquid silver pooled into a miniature landscape of lakes and rivers. This is where the danger becomes very real. Mercury isn't just a heavy metal, it's a neurotoxin that evaporates at room temperature. In the cramped, humid confines of a subterranean tunnel, the air is thick with invisible death. One deep breath could lead to tremors, memory loss, or permanent brain damage. This is why, despite finding thousands of jade statues, obsidian blades, and ritual offerings, the excavation has slowed to a crawl. We have the technology to see it, but our bodies are too fragile to inhabit it. But why was it there? This is the research value that keeps historians awake at night. To the ancient Teotihuacanos, mercury wasn't just a shiny substance. It was a mirror. They likely used it to represent the underworld, a cosmic ocean that separated the living from the dead. By pouring mercury onto the floor, they were creating a physical map of the afterlife. Think about the sheer scale of effort. Mercury doesn't exist in nature in its liquid form. You have to extract it from cinnabar ore through an intense heating process. This means the ancients ran a massive industrial operation just to create a lake of the dead that no living eye was ever supposed to see again. Today, the tunnel is a high-tech fortress. Scientists wear hazmat suits and oxygen tanks, moving with the caution of bomb disposal experts. The site remains one of the most dangerous excavations on the planet because the very material they used to honor their gods is now the primary guardian of their secrets. We are looking at a tomb that is literally toxic to the touch. The question isn't just what is at the end of that tunnel, but whether we will survive the process of finding out. Imagine a library filled with the greatest wisdom of the ancient world. Now imagine a volcano burying that library under 80 feet of boiling volcanic ash. We're traveling to Herculaneum, Italy, the lesser-known but much wealthier neighbor of Pompeii. This is the villa of the Papyri. In the 18th century, workers digging a well stumbled upon what they thought were pieces of charcoal or burnt logs. They threw hundreds of them away, using them as fuel for torches. It wasn't until someone noticed faint, ghostly writing on a fragment that the horrifying truth set in. They weren't burning logs. They were burning the only surviving library from the Roman Empire. But here is the cursed nature of this site. These scrolls, over 1,800 of them, were carbonized by the 500 degrees Celsius heat of Mount Vesuvius. They are essentially sticks of charcoal. If you try to unroll them, they shatter into black dust. For centuries, this was the ultimate frustration for historians. We were holding the lost thoughts of Epicurus and Philodemus in our hands, but to read them was to destroy them. The site is too dangerous to fully excavate because the structural remains are fragile, and the scrolls themselves are in a state of arrested decay. This is where the story takes a turn into the miraculous. We've stopped trying to open them physically. Instead, we're using digital unrolling. Using high-energy X-rays from particle accelerators, the kind used to study subatomic particles, scientists are now scanning these black lumps. They are looking for the ghost of the ink. You see, the ink used back then was lead-based or carbon-based. and it sits just microns above the surface of the papyrus. By using artificial intelligence to distinguish the texture of the ink from the burnt fibers of the scroll, we are finally reading words that haven't been seen since the year 79 AD. The research value here is staggering. Most of what we know about Greek and Roman philosophy comes from copies of copies, translated a dozen times over centuries. But the Villa of the Papyri offers us the primary source. It's like finding a direct backup drive of the ancient mind. The villa remains largely unexcavated. 2/3 of the building are still buried deep underground because the cost and the risk of collapse are too high. We are waiting. We are waiting for a time when our sensors are even sharper and our AI is even smarter. The Villa of the Papyri is a lesson in patience. It teaches us that sometimes the best way to preserve history is to leave it exactly where the volcano put it, until we are truly ready to handle its weight. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. This is the inscription allegedly found at the entrance of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. For decades, the world dismissed it as a campfire story, a tall tale designed to scare away tomb robbers. But as the people involved in the excavation started dying of mysterious illnesses, the curse of the pharaohs shifted from legend to a terrifying medical reality. Lord Carnarvon, the man who funded the search, died just months after the tomb was opened. The cause? An infected mosquito bite that led to blood poisoning. But it didn't stop there. Others suffered from strange, sudden respiratory failures. For years, we thought it was just bad luck. But modern science has uncovered a much more grounded and perhaps more frightening explanation. When a tomb is sealed for 3,000 years, it becomes a perfect, stagnant laboratory. The organic materials inside, food offerings, leather, even the mummies themselves, begin to break down. This creates a breeding ground for a very specific, very deadly fungus called Aspergillus flavus. These spores are incredibly resilient. They can lie dormant in the dark for millennia. When archaeologists break that seal and walk in, they aren't just breathing in ancient air. They are inhaling clouds of toxic, biological dust. For someone with a weakened immune system, like Lord Carnarvon, these spores cause aspergillosis, a fungal infection that ravages the lungs and mimics the symptoms of a supernatural curse. But the danger isn't just biological. It's also chemical. Ancient Egyptians used heavy doses of ammonia, castor oil, and even arsenic in their embalming processes. In a confined space with zero ventilation, the walls themselves can exhale poisonous gases. This is why large parts of the Valley of the Kings remain unexcavated or strictly regulated today. It's not just that we want to respect the dead, it's that the dead have a way of fighting back from the grave. Every time we open a new chamber, we are gambling with pathogens that the modern human immune system hasn't encountered in 3,000 years. The research value here has shifted. We are no longer just looking for gold or masks. We are studying ancient pathogens. By analyzing the air inside these sealed tombs, scientists are learning how bacteria and viruses evolve over thousands of years. So is the curse real? If you define a curse as a spiritual spell, perhaps not. But if you define it as a lethal trap set by time, biology, and chemistry, then the Valley of the Kings is the most cursed place on Earth. It reminds us that some doors are better left closed, not because of what we might find, but because of what might find us. Paris is famous for what's above ground: the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the Grand Boulevards. But beneath the feet of millions of tourists lies an empire of death. A 200-mile labyrinth of dark, damp tunnels lined with the skeletal remains of over 6 million people. This is the Catacombs of Paris, and it is far more dangerous than the city authorities want you to believe. The story began in the late 18th century. Paris was overflowing, not with people, but with the dead. Cemeteries were so packed that bodies were literally pushing through the walls of people's cellars. The stench was lethal. The solution? Move the bones into the abandoned limestone quarries that had been dug out to build the city above. For years, priests led processions of black-veiled wagons through the streets at night, dumping millions of bones into the abyss. They stacked them in patterns: walls of femurs, altars of skulls. It was meant to be a silent city of the dead. But the dead don't like to be disturbed, and the earth here is tired. Why is it too dangerous to fully excavate or even explore? First, there is the void. These tunnels weren't engineered. They were hollowed out haphazardly over centuries. Today, the limestone is saturated with groundwater. Parts of Paris are essentially floating on a giant, crumbling sponge. To excavate new sections is to risk a catastrophic sinkhole that could swallow entire city blocks. And then there's the psychological danger. Only a tiny fraction of the catacombs is open to the public. The rest, it's a restricted no-go zone. Deep in the unmapped sections, the air gets thin and the silence is absolute. There's no GPS signal 60 feet underground. People, known as cataphiles, who sneak into these forbidden sectors often find themselves lost in a repetitive maze of bones where every tunnel looks identical. There are stories and even recovered video footage of people dropping their flashlights in a panic and wandering into the darkness, never to be seen again. The research value here isn't about finding treasure. It's about urban survival. Scientists are studying how the weight of a modern metropolis interacts with ancient voids. They are using 3D laser scanning to map the decay, trying to predict which street might collapse next. The catacombs are a living, breathing record of Parisian history. Every bone tells a story of plague, revolution, or famine. But we will never map it all. We can't. The catacombs are too fragile, too vast, and too unpredictable. Every time a new tunnel is discovered, it's usually because a building above has started to tilt. It's a reminder that we don't just live on top of history, we live on the edge of its collapse. In Paris, the Empire of Death isn't just a tourist attraction. It's a structural time bomb. Imagine an island so densely packed with skyscrapers that from a distance it looks like a massive warship cruising through the East China Sea. This is Hashima Island. In the 1960s, this tiny rock was the most crowded place on Earth, a bustling coal mining metropolis where thousands of families lived, worked, and played. But today, it is a silent, rotting skeleton of concrete. And it is arguably the most unstable ruin in the world. Walking onto Hashima isn't like visiting a museum. It's like stepping into a post-apocalyptic movie. When the coal mines shut down in 1974, the residents left so quickly they abandoned everything. Half-eaten meals, school books on desks, televisions still plugged into dead outlets. For decades, the island was completely sealed off. But it wasn't ghosts that kept people away. It was concrete cancer. You see, Hashima was a pioneer in reinforced concrete construction. But builders back then didn't realize that mixing sea sand into concrete or exposing it to constant salt spray would be a death sentence. The salt water has penetrated deep into the structures, rusting the iron rebar from the inside out. The metal expands, the concrete cracks, and the buildings literally explode in slow motion. This is why Hashima is too dangerous to fully excavate or restore. A gust of wind or the vibration of a loud shout could, in theory, trigger a domino effect. These high-rise apartment blocks are so fragile that they are collapsing under their own weight. To walk inside is to play a game of Russian roulette with gravity. But the danger isn't just physical, it's emotional and historical. Hashima hides a dark chapter of history, the forced labor of Korean and Chinese prisoners during World War II. For them, this warship wasn't a miracle of modern living. It was a prison. This makes the island a political minefield. How do you preserve a site that represents both industrial genius and human suffering? The research value of Hashima is unique. It's a controlled decay laboratory. Scientists are watching it to see exactly how modern materials, concrete, glass, and steel fail when left to nature. It's a preview of what our cities might look like 1,000 years after humans vanish. We aren't just looking at the past here, we're looking at a possible future. Today, Japan allows tourists to walk on a very small reinforced walkway on the edge of the island. But the heart of Hashima, the cradle of the coal, remains forbidden. We watch from a distance as the salt air continues its work, turning a symbol of power into a pile of gray dust. Hashima teaches us that even the strongest concrete is no match for the ocean or the weight of a dark history. Most people think of Hawaii as a land of luxury resorts, surfing, and vibrant nightlife. But there is one island in the chain that has remained a complete mystery for over 160 years. It's called Niihau, the Forbidden Isle. It is a private world, closed to the public, and it's arguably one of the most culturally dangerous places to disturb on the planet. The story of Niihau began in 1864, when Elizabeth Sinclair purchased the entire island from King Kamehameha V for just $10,000 in gold. The king had one request, that the Sinclair family protect the island and its people from the outside world. And they kept that promise. To this day, Niihau has no paved roads, no telephones, no running water, and zero internet. The residents, around 170 native Hawaiians, speak a unique dialect of the Hawaiian language that has been lost everywhere else. They live off the land, fishing and collecting the island's famous tiny seashells. It is a living, breathing time capsule of a civilization that the rest of the world has forgotten. But why is it on a list of dangerous sites? The danger here isn't a toxic chemical or a collapsing tunnel. It's cultural pathogen. In the world of anthropology, contact with modern civilization can be as lethal as a virus. If we were to open Niihau to tourism, to build hotels, to bring in high-speed internet, to flood the island with outsiders, the 160-year-old social fabric would evaporate in a single generation. We would be excavating a culture to death. There have been moments where the outside world forced its way in. During World War II, a Japanese pilot crashed on Niihau after the attack on Pearl Harbor, leading to a week-long hostage crisis known as the Niihau Incident. It was a brutal reminder that even a forbidden paradise isn't immune to the violence of the modern era. The research value of Niihau is priceless, but it must be conducted from a distance. Linguists and historians look at Niihau as the only place where pure Hawaiian culture exists in its natural state. It's a reference point, a baseline for what was lost when the rest of Hawaii was colonized. But the ethical dilemma is massive. Does our right to know and study outweigh their right to remain undisturbed? To this day, you can only visit the shores of Niihau by taking a strictly supervised helicopter tour or a hunting trip that costs thousands of dollars. And even then, you are forbidden from interacting with the locals. The Robinson family, descendants of Elizabeth Sinclair, remain the island's fierce guardians. Niihau teaches us a different kind of lesson about preservation. Sometimes, the most scientific thing we can do is to put down the camera, stop the excavation, and let a people live in the silence they fought so hard to keep. Because once a secret is shared with the world, it ceases to be a secret. And on Niihau, the secret is everything. Imagine walking into a city built 4,000 years ago and finding people still lying in the streets, not buried in graves but scattered where they fell, some holding hands, others shielding their faces as if protecting themselves from a flash of light they never saw coming. Welcome to Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan, a site so baffling that it has sparked some of the most controversial theories in the history of archaeology. When excavators first uncovered these skeletons in the 1920s, they noticed something chilling. There were no signs of sword wounds, no spearheads, no evidence of a conventional war. But the bones were heavily calcified. And then the story took a darker turn. Some early researchers claimed that these skeletons were among the most radioactive ever found, comparable to the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the real danger isn't just the radiation, it's the green glass. Scattered across the city are huge patches of vitrified soil. This happens when sand is heated to over 1,500 degrees Celsius, turning it into glass. In the modern world, we only see this at atomic test sites. How did a Bronze Age civilization, which hadn't even invented the iron sword, generate heat intense enough to melt the very earth beneath their feet? Today, Mohenjo-Daro is too dangerous to fully excavate for a much more immediate reason: salt leprosy. The ground here is saturated with salt. As soon as the ancient bricks are exposed to the air, the salt crystallizes and expands, literally exploding the bricks from the inside. We are in a race against time. The more we dig to find answers, the faster the city turns to dust. The research value of this site is immense because it shatters our timeline of human progress. Mohenjo-Daro had grid-planned streets, complex drainage systems, and public baths that wouldn't be matched for another 2,000 years. It was a masterpiece of urban engineering. But its end was sudden and absolute. Was it a massive climate shift? A tectonic event? Or, as some ancient astronaut theorists suggest, something far more advanced? Mainstream science remains skeptical of the atomic theory, blaming the vitrification on ancient pottery kilns. But the sheer scale of the melted area remains a massive, uncomfortable question mark in our history books. We are forced to stop. We have covered much of the site back up with sand to protect it from the elements. We are effectively reburying the evidence. Mohenjo-Daro remains a silent witness to a disaster we can't quite explain. It's a city that warns us. The higher a civilization climbs, the more mysterious and devastating its fall can be. We leave it alone now. Not because we've solved the mystery, but because the site is literally evaporating before our eyes. When we think of cities frozen in time by volcanoes, our minds immediately go to Pompeii. But over 1,500 years before Vesuvius, a much larger eruption took place on the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini. This was the Minoan eruption, one of the most powerful volcanic events in human history. It buried the city of Akrotiri under dozens of feet of pumice and ash. And for 3,500 years, it remained a ghost city, perfectly preserved. But here is where Akrotiri becomes a riddle. In Pompeii, we found the hollow spaces where people died. We found their pets, their jewelry, their last meals. But in Akrotiri, despite excavating nearly 40 massive buildings, archaeologists haven't found a single human skeleton. Not one. No gold, no silver, no precious gems were left behind. It's as if an entire civilization, thousands of people, just vanished. They knew. They had felt the warning tremors, packed their most valuable possessions, and successfully evacuated the island. But where did they go? No records of a massive influx of Minoan refugees exist in the nearby lands. The sea swallowed their story. The danger of excavating Papyri today is twofold. First, there's the architectural fragility. These aren't just ruins. They are three-story mansions with sophisticated plumbing and breathtaking frescoes. But they are held together by the very volcanic ash that buried them. When you remove that ash, the buildings lose their structural support. In 2005, the site's protective roof collapsed, killing a tourist and proving that the site is still fighting against being uncovered. Second, there's the ghost of the volcano. Santorini is an active caldera. The ground at Akrotiri is a geological minefield of unstable pumice layers. To dig deeper is to risk a landslide that could crush the delicate 3,500-year-old art that makes this site priceless. The research value here is found in the art of the everyday. The frescoes at Akrotiri are some of the most vibrant and sophisticated in the ancient world. They depict blue monkeys, saffron gatherers, and massive naval fleets. They show us a society that was so advanced it felt modern. They had toilets with flushing systems and multi-story apartment complexes at a time when most of the world was living in mud huts. Akrotiri is often linked to the legend of Atlantis. Some believe this was the lost continent that Plato described, a high civilization destroyed by a single day and night of fire and sea. Today, a massive bioclimatic roof covers the site, protecting it from the elements. We move slowly, millimeter by millimeter, because we aren't just uncovering a city, we are uncovering a warning. Akrotiri proves that no matter how advanced we become, we are always living at the mercy of the earth. Deep in the heart of the Syrian desert, there is a place that once connected the Roman Empire to the Silk Roads of the East. Palmyra. For 2,000 years, its towering colonnades and golden sandstone temples stood as a testament to human diplomacy and architectural genius. But today, Palmyra is a martyr. It is a site where the ancient past has been caught in the crossfire of modern radicalism, turning a World Heritage Site into a deadly minefield. The danger here isn't a natural curse or a chemical leak, it's man-made. In 2015, the world watched in horror as the Temple of Bel and the Arch of Triumph were systematically dynamited. But the tragedy didn't end with the stones. The site's chief archaeologist, 82-year-old Khaled al-Assad, refused to reveal where the city's movable artifacts were hidden. He was publicly executed for protecting history. His blood is now part of the soil of Palmyra. Why is it too dangerous to excavate today? Because the retreating forces didn't just leave behind rubble. They left behind a labyrinth of IEDs. The ruins are literally booby-trapped. Hidden inside the cracks of Roman columns and buried under the dust of ancient plazas are non-metallic mines designed to kill anyone who tries to restore these structures. Excavation is no longer an academic pursuit. It is a life-or-death gamble for demining teams. Every time a researcher tries to map a fallen stone, they risk triggering a blast that could destroy not only themselves, but the very history they are trying to save. The Earth here is no longer a source of knowledge. It is a weapon. The research value of Palmyra is found in its cultural resilience. Despite the destruction, new technology is fighting back. We are using satellite imagery and high-resolution 3D modeling to document the damage without stepping foot on the ground. This is remote archaeology. We are creating a digital twin of Palmyra, ensuring that even if the physical stones are turned to dust, the memory of the city remains indestructible. Historians are now looking at Palmyra to understand how cultures merge. This wasn't just a Roman city, it was a blend of Persian, Greek, and Semitic influences. It was the original global melting pot. Today, Palmyra is a ghost town. The tourists are gone, the archaeologists are in exile, and the desert wind is the only thing moving through the Arch of Triumph. We stay away because we must. We wait for a day when the mines are cleared and the wounds of war have healed. Palmyra teaches us that the greatest danger to our past isn't time or nature, it's us. It is a reminder that history is fragile, and some secrets are protected by a price too high to pay. Rising from the dusty plains of Iraq is a structure that looks less like a building and more like a frozen whirlwind. This is the Malwiya Tower, the iconic minaret of the Great Mosque of Samarra. Built in the 9th century, it was once the largest mosque in the world, a symbol of the staggering power of the Abbasid Caliphate. But today, this spiral of mud is one of the most fragile and dangerous archaeological sites on the planet. The danger here is a silent, microscopic enemy: structural fatigue. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt or the marble temples of Greece, Samarra was built almost entirely of mud brick and baked clay. These materials have a shelf life. For over 1,000 years, the desert sun and wind have been sandblasting the tower, wearing down its spiral ramp. Today, the internal structure is so compromised that even the vibration of a passing truck or a heavy footstep could, in theory, cause a catastrophic collapse. But the danger isn't just natural. In recent decades, Samarra became a victim of its own height. During the Iraq War, the top of the minaret was used as a sniper position because it offers a 360-degree view of the surrounding valley. In 2005, insurgents bombed the top section to displace those positions. Now the tower doesn't just suffer from age, it suffers from trauma. The cracks spiderwebbing through the brickwork are literal battle scars that have made the entire 52-meter structure a leaning, trembling giant. Why is the research value so high? Samarra represents a golden age of Islamic architecture and urban planning. At its peak, this was a city that stretched for 40 kilometers, one of the largest metropolitan areas of the medieval world. It was a laboratory for art, where the Samarra style of stucco carving was invented, influencing designs from North Africa to Central Asia. Every brick we can save tells us how an empire managed water, trade, and millions of people in a harsh desert environment. But to excavate the remains of the surrounding palaces is almost impossible. The mud brick walls are so eroded that they are nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding soil. If you dig too fast or with the wrong tools, you don't find a wall, you destroy it. Samarra is currently on the UNESCO list of World Heritage in Danger. It is a race against gravity and the shifting sands of politics. We cannot climb it freely anymore, and we cannot dig beneath it without risking the whole thing toppling over. The Malwiya Tower stands as a lonely sentinel, a spiral of mud that has survived empires and wars, but might finally be defeated by the simple passage of time. It teaches us that some of history's greatest achievements are also its most delicate. We watch from a distance, hoping that this whirlwind of clay doesn't return to the dust from which it was born. In the scorching silence of Sudan's Bayuda Desert, there lies a site that was once the beating heart of an empire's wealth. This is Jabal Maragha. 2,000 years ago, during the Meroitic period, this wasn't a place for worship or burial. It was an industrial powerhouse. A gold processing center where the ancient kingdom of Kush refined the precious metal that funded their black pharaohs. But today, Jabal Maragha is the site of a modern tragedy. It is too dangerous to excavate because it has become a front line in a different kind of war: gold fever. Sudan is currently gripped by a massive, unregulated gold rush. Driven by poverty and the soaring price of gold, thousands of locals have flooded the desert with metal detectors and heavy machinery. In 2020, archaeologists arrived at Jabal Maragha to find a scene of absolute devastation. Two large backhoes, giant mechanical diggers, had driven right into the center of the 2,000-year-old site. In a desperate search for a few grams of gold, the looters had dug a hole 5 meters deep, destroying the very foundations of the ancient stone buildings. The danger here is human destruction. Unlike the slow decay of wind or water, a backhoe can erase 1,000 years of history in 10 minutes. The site is now unstable, a chaotic landscape of trenches and rubble. But the real danger to researchers is the looters themselves. These are remote areas, far from the reach of the law, where illegal mining syndicates operate with impunity. To stand between a gold seeker and his prize is a life-threatening move. The research value of Jabal Maragha is or was unique. Most archaeological sites tell us how the elites lived, but Jabal Maragha was supposed to tell us how they worked. It was a rare look into ancient metallurgy. We found grinding stones used to crush quartz, and furnaces designed to melt gold at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. By studying this site, we were learning how the Kushites managed a massive industrial supply chain in the middle of a desert. They weren't just warriors, they were master engineers and chemists. Every stone destroyed by a looter's shovel is a page ripped out of the textbook of African technological history. Today, Jabal Maragha is a reminder that the greatest threat to our past isn't the curse of the ancients, but the desperation of the living. We cannot excavate because the site is being eaten from the inside out by greed. The gold of the sun that once built empires is now causing their physical memory to vanish into the sand. As we watch the dust settle behind the looters' trucks, we have to ask ourselves, what is more valuable? The gold we can wear today, or the history that tells us who we were 2 millennia ago? In Jabal Maragha, we are losing that answer, one shovel at a time. Deep within the rugged, vertical valleys of western Afghanistan stands a structure so improbable that it feels like a mirage. Rising 62 meters above the valley floor, wrapped in intricate terracotta calligraphy, is the Minaret of Jam. For 800 years, this lonely sentinel has survived the Mongol invasions that wiped its surrounding city off the map. But today, it is the focus of a desperate rescue mission that we might already be losing. The danger at Jam is immediate and physical. The minaret was built at the junction where 2 rivers meet. Over 8 centuries, the Hari River has been gnawing at its foundations. Today, the Minaret of Jam is leaning. It is a 60-ton giant of brick and mortar, tilted at a precarious angle. To excavate the surrounding area or to bring in heavy stabilization equipment is a nightmare. One wrong vibration, one shift in the water-saturated soil, and this 800-year-old masterpiece could snap like a dry twig. But the isolation that protected it for centuries is now its greatest threat. The site is located in a no-man's land. Between the constant threat of flash floods and the shifting control of local militias, it is nearly impossible for international teams to reach. In 2019, hundreds of workers tried to build a protective wall to divert the river, only for the area to become a battlefield days later. There are no roads to Jam. To get there, you must travel through mountain passes, controlled by those who don't always value the preservation of the past. The danger isn't just that the tower might fall, it's that anyone who tries to save it might never come back. The research value of JAM is a window into a lost empire. The Ghurids. They were a global superpower that once ruled from India to Iran, and the minaret of JAM is almost the only thing they left behind. It's covered in a complete surah of the Quran, written in stunning Kufic script. Archaeologists believe that the minaret wasn't just a call to prayer, it was a victory tower. Beneath the silt and rubble surrounding it lie the remains of the Turquoise Mountain, a legendary lost capital that historians have been searching for centuries. But we can't dig for it. The ground is too unstable, and the risk of toppling the tower is too high. Today, the minaret of JAM stands as a symbol of resilience and extreme fragility. It is a masterpiece in a place where peace is a luxury. We watch it through satellite eyes, tracking its lean millimeter by millimeter, waiting for the day when the world is stable enough to save it. As the sun sets over the Afghan mountains, casting a long, tilted shadow across the river, the lonely sentinel remains. It reminds us that history doesn't always die in a flash of fire. Sometimes it just slowly, quietly, leans into the earth until it's gone. It is a secret kept by the mountains, and for now, that is where it must stay. We often think of archaeology as a race to uncover the truth, but these 12 sites teach us a different lesson. Sometimes the greatest act of preservation is to walk away. Whether it's toxic mercury, crumbling concrete, or the fragility of human culture, some secrets are protected for a reason. By leaving these doors closed today, we aren't losing history. We're giving the future a chance to save it. Because once a site is destroyed, it's gone forever. Some mysteries are worth the wait.